Whew, where to begin? There was so much going on in this episode that it's hard to decide where to start first. It was great fun and it was entertaining, and while it had so much in terms of developing the story and the world building of Star Wars itself, sadly the episode came across as a little bit flat to me. Now I want to explicitly state that I did enjoy this episode and I did love it, but not necessarily for the episode in itself, but what it does for the context of the show and the world around it. I literally cannot do this review without spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, please go and watch it firsthand. You have been warned. As always, I like to get my criticisms out of the way first, so I can delve more deeper into the things that I liked, and the biggest thing for me personally in this episode was that it felt kind of flat. It's difficult to really explain what I mean by that, but it felt a little bit static in its design. It was a really slow burner that never really paid off given its impactful and kind of grandiose opening. And while I did feel that the episode was really quite beautiful in terms of its cinematography, the lighting, the atmosphere, the general flatness of this episode was really quite glaring. Additionally, I was disappointed that the tease from episode 3 with Moff Gideon and the Dark Troopers versus Ahsoka wasn't realised, and I know that was expectation for me, but I'm still sad we didn't see it, although there is still a possibility we still might. My last criticism is with Ahsoka herself. Now I am going to talk about her in my positive sides as well, because there is a lot of positives, but I still struggle a little bit with seeing Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. She did begin to grow on me as I watched more and more of the episode, but her voice, it just doesn't match with the kind of sweeter, more compassionate and energetic tone and inflection that Ashley Eckstein has in her performance. Rosario was more calm, she was more sensei-like in her voice performance, and I do think that was more intentional. She's older, she has been through a lot more, she's wiser, but I do still think that Rosario missed a certain emotional inflection that Ashley just nailed, and Ahsoka in this episode came across a little bit emotionless at times, especially when she met the child, and in my head it just didn't quite work because that's not how I see Ahsoka. And while I think Rosario fit the look perfectly, the voice of Ahsoka is equally as important to her as her look, and it's something that I need to get used to between the two different actresses. Now with my criticism out of the way, I want to swing that around and say how incredible she did look on screen. Not only did Rosario have the physical performance of Ahsoka that I was expecting, she also had the subtlety in her movement and the small little facial expressions that makes Ahsoka so endearing. Her visual performance of the character was absolutely outstanding, and I can't fault Rosario Dawson there. Despite my caution, I do think she was a perfect choice for the role visually, and I'm so glad that we got an incredible representation of a character that I love in live action. I absolutely adored some of the specific shots that she was in that threw back to her ties to the cartoons, and her lightsabers in live action were exquisite to see on screen. Her combat was fast and deadly, and it was great fun to watch, and the truth is, a lot could have gone wrong with this, and I'm so happy to be able to say that a lot more went right. Where else do we go from here? There's so much happening in this episode that it's truly hard to keep track. Not only do we have a name for Baby Yoda, Grogu, but we also know that he was being trained as a Jedi during the Clone Wars and was hidden to save his life. This adds so much important context for the story, because this means that Baby Yoda could literally be the offspring or the relative of Yaddle or Yoda rather than a clone that a lot of people were theorizing. It also means certain characters might have known who he was during the Clone Wars, and additionally this episode added so much to the lore, such as introducing HK-87 assassin droids, which you know blew my mind from a KOTOR fan's perspective. Now of course it wasn't quite HK-47 and it didn't have the mannerisms that he had, but just knowing that the HK-47 series of droids was the inspiration for this was all I needed to get excited, and it gives me hope that maybe one day we'll see my boy on screen. Additionally, the fact that we're going to Tython, the home planet of the Jedi, and one of the most integral planets to the Old Republic, is going to be incredible, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the Tython Jedi Temple in live action. Then there's even more things, such as the name drop of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and while I don't think Thrawn will be integral to this story, it has so many connotations for other stories, and I think this is kind of proof that we're going to be seeing more than one Jedi in the show, and I'm super intrigued to see who that is because there aren't many around. It kind of makes sense to me that it will be Ezra or Luke that will train Grogu, given Ahsoka's refusal to do so out of fear that he'll become like Anakin. Ezra does make a lot more sense in live action because of the freedom they can have in his design, whereas I would absolutely adore to see Luke train young baby Yoda and take on this challenge, although I don't think this will happen. Also, it's quite funny because we're quite a way into this review and I haven't even spoken about the story in general of the episode. Now, it wasn't particularly great as an episodic story, but these are the kind of stories that I do generally prefer. The episode was individual enough to be within its own narrative bubble, but at the same time it moved the overarching narrative forward in a way that I didn't think episode 4 did. And that's why I personally do prefer this episode over episode 4 and episode 2. It was also very intriguing to see Kyle Reese from the Terminator franchise in this episode. It was a little bit out of place, but I absolutely love the man. And I was generally interested in the evil woman that was working for Thrawn, but I didn't really feel enough of a connection with the villains or the townsfolk to really care too much about the outcome. However, there was a lot of representation in this episode that I'm sure a lot of people are going to appreciate. Lastly, I just want to make mention of the music, the soundtrack. The soundtrack in this episode was the best I think we've had in the season so far. It made use of so much more Star Wars music from outside of the show, while also keeping it within the same kind of musical category. Ahsoka's theme, for example, was edited in such a way that it fit the Mandalorian universe rather than being a standout from it, and it has to be applauded at how good it truly was. Additionally, the planet design was exquisite. There was a lot of Rise of Skywalker Mustafar vibes at times, and I just loved the general tone of the whole episode from a visual standpoint. With all that said, I'm extremely excited to see where the season is going to go further. We've already seen so much happen, and I'm at the point where I just don't know what could happen now, and that really excites me. There's just so many possibilities and so many directions that this show could go in now, and I'm excited to see almost any one of them. However, I do wish that we had a little bit of Ahsoka versus Dark Trooper action, but alas, you can't have everything, right? If you've already seen it, I really hope you enjoyed it, and tell me below, what did you think of this week's episode? If you enjoyed the video, perhaps consider subscribing to see my reviews of the show every single week, and don't forget to hit the like button if you did enjoy it. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, come and check out my Patreon, or become a channel member if you want to support the channel further, and please come and join my Discord server. I'd love to have you there. All of the links are in the description below. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, may the Force be with you. Always.